Yo, this is Bench Gamer here. So ever since Zenless Zone Zero came out, there have been quite a few criticisms of the game, but most of them boil down to one or two things. The first one is that the combat is too simple and it is too easy, and I won't cover that in this video because obviously, judging by the title and thumbnail, I'm probably going to save it for another feature video. This one is just going to be about the second criticism, which is that people don't like the TV system. So if you don't know what the TV system is, it's basically how you interact with the story content as well as the Hollow Zero game mode in Zenless Zone Zero. The game mode called Hollow Zero is basically just a roguelike. It's the simulated universe of Zenless Zone Zero. And the story mode is pretty self-explanatory. It's how you interact with the story, questing, world exploration outside of the main hubs. Most of the exploration you do when it comes to questing actually happens in the TV system, and the TV system is this almost tabletop-esque dungeon crawler tile-based system where you are represented by a sprite on a tile, and you go through the tiles, and then you move through the tiles with like WASD or whatever button you use on controller and on mobile. And you go through the tiles. I'm guessing you just tap the tiles on mobile to go to different places. You go through the tiles to go to different tiles, and then on those different tiles will be like domains, like combat domains, which teleport you to combat's instance, and then you do the combat there. You do the 3D combat that you have seen all over the place in the advertisements, and you probably did not see the TV system because they know that it's not going to be popular. They know that this system is not going to be very easy to hype up, and it's not going to be hyped because it is not what people want to play in these games. However, I will say that right off the bat, I actually love this system. And there are two or three major reasons for this. The first one is that I'm very sick of open world gacha games. I'm very sick of just open world traversal in general, not even just like in gacha games. I don't like open world systems that much anymore. I don't really want to go over around to this tower or that tower and unlock this tower, you get a piece of map, and then you go to this other tower, and then it's like a smaller tower. So you don't unlock a piece of map, but you get a teleport point because that's what towers do. It's all over the place in Ubisoft games. It's all over the place in gacha games. Elden Ring also does it to an extent, even though it does it better. I don't, I don't, I don't vibe with those games anymore. It's too common. It's too ubiquitous with like action RPGs at this point. I believe the recent Dragon's Dogma also did this. It's another open world game, I believe. So for me, the uniqueness and the attractiveness of open world and just like 3D open world traversal, 3D, I wouldn't even say 3D open world, just like 3D world traversal when you are represented by a third person character, and then you go over to this NPC, you talk to that NPC, you get a quest, and then you go to this place, and then you have to travel for like I don't know, not 20 minutes, that's exaggerated. It's like, 1 or 2 minutes of travel. You go to this place, which is obviously a place where there are going to be enemies, and you kill those enemies, and then you go to this other place, you get another NPC quest, and you go over to that other place another 1 or 2 minutes away, and you kill those enemies, and that's basically the quest. That is basically 80 or to 90% of all open world questing in pretty much every single game. And I think it is nice to have a break from that. I think it is nice that in Zenless Zone Zero we don't actually have that. Instead, what we do is that we just go through a bunch of tiles, and then we pick up these like little chests and items, and then we get bonuses like the in-game currency. And then once you get to the very end, once you've done all of the combat domains, you go to the very end objective. Maybe you have to solve a puzzle or two to get there, and then that is basically the end of the mission. I actually think that is, for me personally, preferable to open world traversal at this point. I know I've already said this in the previous video, but I want to get this out there in a more condensed version so that people can hear it. I don't want to convince anybody to like be on my side, because I know that I can't convince anybody, because people are going into this game with different expectations. If you have seen all the ads, they don't advertise the TV system at all. So it's perfectly viable, it's perfectly legitimate for people to be upset that they got a product that was not advertised to them. I'm just saying that for me personally, I am on the other spectrum of this argument, this perspective that the TV system is shit. In fact, over time, as I got deeper into the story, I feel like the novelty of the TV system has actually increased. There were a couple of instances where I actually thought, wow, they actually made pretty creative use of this TV system. Like there was this one instance when you had to like push a bunch of bombs onto a train, and then you get on the train itself, or you had to stop a train. And then there was this another instance where like there was this other sprite going around, and you have to capture it by, setting up bombs, and the bomb would go off after you move a certain amount of tiles. And I found that it was novel. It was a novel experience, and it just felt more fresh. Again, I go back to this idea of feeling fresh. Not all things that are different from, the most popular thing is good. But for me personally, I am at the point where I've played so many of these open world games. That I've played Tower Fantasy, I've played Elden Ring, I'm not trying to compare the two games. They're not nearly on the same quality. I'm just saying that these are like the most recent games I've played in a couple of recent years. Tower Fantasy, Wuthering Waves, Genshin Impact mostly, because I've been playing a lot of Genshin Impact, as you guys probably know. I used to mainly cover Genshin Impact. And then also, yeah, just like all these new gacha games that are essentially every single new AAA gacha game is just an open world game at this point. They're not going to do anything different. And not only are they like an open world game, they also have the exact same unit interface as Genshin Impact. So it almost feels like I'm just playing the same game over and over again. And I find that this TV system has been a very much needed breath of fresh air. It felt like I was playing almost like an early 2000s or late 90s game. And this is the third reason why I actually like the system. This is going to be a very biased, very subjective, very unobjective opinion, which is that I have a lot of nostalgia for early 2000s and late 90s stuff. I am a person who grew up at that time. I am 31 years old at this point, so you can probably guess when I was born. I'm not saying that everybody who is my age is going to like the TV system. That is absolutely not true. I know that there are content creators and other people my age who do not like the TV system. I am just saying that personally for me, it reminds me a lot of like the early Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, even the original Game Boy, because that was the first, I think that was the first console, not console. It was probably called a console back then, but it's not a console now. A handheld device. That was my first handheld device. And it just reminds me of all of these like pixelated sprites that a lot of people will probably call dog shit nowadays, but this game does appeal a lot to people, who grew up at that point, people who know what VHS tapes are, people who know what tube TVs are, who grew up with that stuff, who still, remember floppy drives and, flash discs, and, all of this kind of stuff that seems retro now to people born after 2000. This is what nostalgic stuff looks like to me. So I have a lot of fond memories of that kind of content. And the fact that we are getting a game mode that is kind of intrinsic to what Zenless Zone Zero is presenting itself as now, when you actually get to play the game, is making me happy. I instinctively smile when I actually think about the TV system. It's gone to that point. I am that like deluded. I really like it. I love it. I really like it. I love it. It is good. It is what I have always wanted in a game like this. It feels more convenient actually than an open world game. Again, I go back to the fact that I have just played so many of these open world games. I want it to be just done quickly. And for me, doing the open world content is it's not very fast. It feels like needlessly open. It feels like needlessly big for the sake of being like an open world environment that you can look at and it's very pretty, but ultimately you're just interacting with it in the same way. I think that the puzzles in the TV system kind of remind me of the puzzles that we have, like the clocky puzzles in Penacony, and it just it feels like it's something that actually engages my brain, not like a lot, because the puzzles are obviously not hard, but I have to think about it for like maybe 5 or 10 seconds before I actually go do it. And there were even 1 or 2 times where I failed the puzzle and I had to go do it again, maybe mostly because I didn't understand what the puzzle was actually about. But if I was going to do that, if I was going to play this as an open world game, I would just be doing that anyways in the open world. So why would not just do it on this TV system? Anyways, that's my take on the TV system. I actually absolutely love it. I know that there are a lot of people who don't, and I am not trying to invalidate their opinion. In fact, I think their opinion is incredibly legitimate because they did not advertise this shit at all. People who went into this game probably thought that it was going to be an open world, not an open world, but an HSR Honkai Star-esque instance based. You go to this NPC and you talk to them, and then you go to this other area and then you fight a bunch of enemies, and then just the typical JRPG affair. But no, this is a game that was made for mobile. This was a game that was obviously made to cater to people who are actually just kind of sick of Genshin Impact and HSR and probably Wuthering Waves and all these other games as well. It was made to be different from other gacha games. I think that is why it feels so different and probably so off-putting compared to all the different other AAA. I wouldn't say AAA, maybe like double A, because Wuthering Waves has a lot of problems, but I guess AAA games are also kind of janky nowadays. But basically what I'm saying, all of the high budget gacha games, they all feel the same now. And this one is the first one since Genshin Impact that has felt different. And the TV system definitely plays a big role in that, for better or worse. Anyways, this is Bench Gamer signing out. I will see you guys sometimes. Bye bye.